In the city of angels, where dreams are made of and nightmares come to life, there's a place called Midnight Brew for the initiated. It's a biker's paradise, a sanctuary of chrome and leather nestled in an unassuming corner that caters to the rowdiest crowd in town. Now, normally, Diesel wasn't an animal hater. It was a quiet evening in LA, the kind of night where the palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze, casting dancing shadows on the cracked asphalt. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the mournful cry of a lonely saxophone from a jazz club down the street. "Stupid mutt," he snarled, his voice like gravel and concrete. But he hadn't counted on two things: the dog's tenacity and the quiet man in the shadows. This was Diesel's territory, and he wasn't looking for a fight. But something about the dog, maybe its spirit, its refusal to back down in the face of such overwhelming odds. It reminded him of himself, of the scrappy underdog that had clawed its way through life against all odds. And it turned to see him coming out of the shadows, the man with the hawk eyes striding toward him, his face still hidden in the darkness. "About what you just did?" Diesel laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed in the narrow alley. "Then get lost," Diesel snarled, but the man didn't move. He just stood there, his eyes boring into Diesel's, daring him to make a move. "Easy, boy," he whispered. "You all right?" The dog whimpered, licking the man's hand, grateful for the kindness, for the touch that was firm yet reassuring. The man helped the dog up, bracing it with his arm. "Come on," he said softly. "We gotta get you out of here." The dog limped alongside the man, leaning heavily on him, its head resting on his knee. Together, they walked away from the neon lights and the sounds of Midnight Brew, disappearing into the labyrinth of the city. Two lost souls seeking solace in the darkness, and for a moment, it looked like Diesel might take him up on it. He took a menacing step forward, his face contorted with rage. But then the giant in the leather helmet put a hand on his shoulder, pulling him back. "What? You got a problem with that?" He sneered. "That mutt was on my turf. I told him to get lost, so I kicked him." "Yeah, well, some of us got a problem with that," the man said, stepping closer. "Me too," a new voice rumbled from inside the bar. All eyes turned to the door as a giant of a man emerged, his face hidden under a leather helmet. "You got something to say, punk?" Diesel spat, taking another swig from the bottle. Diesel turned slowly, his eyes narrowed, and for the first time, he noticed the man, the way he moved, the quiet menace that seemed to ooze from his pores. "What do you want?" Diesel snarled, taking a swig from the bottle. Diesel glared at the man in the shadows, then let out a snort and stepped back. He took another swig from the bottle, trying to calm his nerves. "Fine," he snarled. "You win. Mutt can stay. But if he causes any trouble, I'm gonna kick his ass again." With that, he turned and swaggered back into the bar, leaving the man in the shadows alone with the dog. And that was something he could respect. See, while Diesel was busy making trouble, a pair of eyes had been watching from the darkness, hidden between two parked cars. They belonged to a man, or at least what was left of a man after the city had chewed him up and spit him out. He was lanky, his clothes were threadbare, and his face, well, it was a roadmap of the hard life he'd lived. But those eyes, they were sharp, keen, and unforgiving, like a hawk's eye on its prey. He'd seen what Diesel had done, and he wasn't happy about it. Then, before the dog could react, he swung his foot in a vicious kick. It was a brutal move, meant to drive the dog away, and it landed with sickening force on the pavement, sending a jolt of pain through the small body. He slipped out from his hiding place and stalked toward the bar, his gait fluid and predatory. Diesel, oblivious to the danger lurking in the darkness, continued to swagger outside the bar, his taunts echoing in the night. "Get out of here, mutt. This ain't your playground." The dog whimpered, hiding in the shadows between the dumpsters, its tail tucked tightly between its legs. It wanted to run, to get as far away from this place as it could, but the pain in its side made it hard to move. Each breath was a torment, each step a gamble. The dog yelped, staggering backward, its tail between its legs. It tried to run, but the kick had landed squarely on its ribs, and every breath sent searing pain through its thin frame. The dog, a scruffy mix of golden retriever and something else, wagged its tail tentatively, sniffing around the overflowing dumpsters behind Midnight Brew. It was a sorry sight, skinny and dusty, its ribs showing through its matted fur. Its eyes, though, were bright and alert, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. It was a fighter, this dog, and it had been through some hard times. He even had a soft spot for the neighborhood stray that hung around, a sleek black cat with emerald eyes named Jinx. But this dog, well, it was an unknown quantity, a wild card in the carefully calibrated world of Midnight Brew, and Diesel didn't like surprises. It's loud, it's brash, and it has got more than its fair share of hard-edged characters who come for the beer, stay for the brawls. And at the heart of this den of iniquity is a man they call Diesel, a behemoth of a biker with a soul patch of a goatee and a temper that could curdle milk. He's the kind of guy you wouldn't want to meet on a dark night, especially not when he's had one too many and was looking for a fight. But tonight was different. There was a new challenger in town, an interloper in his domain, a scruffy golden mutt that dared to sniff around his turf. The dog, oblivious to the storm that was brewing inside the bar, continued its exploration of the back alley. As if sensing danger, the dog suddenly lifted its head and let out a low growl. It had caught the scent of trouble, the musky odor of stale sweat and cheap cologne. Turning slowly, it saw him, Diesel, stumbling out of the bar, a human embodiment of the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. In his hand, he was clutching a bottle of whiskey, and his burly frame was swaying slightly, a sure sign of how much trouble he was holding inside. His face, weathered and scarred, was twisted into a sneer, and his eyes, hard and cold, glinted like chips of ice in the dim light. He was trouble personified, and the dog knew it instinctively. Without a word, Diesel took a swig from the bottle, then turned his attention to the dog, his eyes narrowing. Diesel watched with a cruel smile on his face. He'd sent strays packing before, and this one would be no different. Now, normally, he wouldn't have interfered. As the dog limped away, trying to shake off the pain of Diesel's kick, the man in the shadows made his move. But then it heard a new sound, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the soft thud of footsteps. "Just here to talk," the man said quietly, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. The man in the shadows remained calm. "I don't want any trouble," he said quietly. "Let it go, Diesel," the man said quietly. "Not worth it." The man knelt down beside the dog, his touch gentle as he examined the wound on its ribs. They all hate Keanu Reeves. Some are just too afraid to admit it. It was a lively place filled with TVs tuned to sports, loud music, and people having a great time. He sat down at the bar and ordered himself a beer. As he took it in, he noticed a big Doberman on the other side of the room, tied up beside a table. The dog looked sad, so he tried again. "Your dog looks sad. Are you sure you should leave him here alone?" He gestured towards the empty leash. "And besides, I've seen you looking at him the entire night. I think you want to go for a walk." But as Kevin made his way through the parking lot, he heard shouts and curses. He turned around and saw Ving storming towards him. The two men grappled on the ground, fists flying as they struggled for dominance. Kevin was bigger than Ving, but the guy was strong and fueled by rage. They rolled around in the dirt, the fight escalating until finally Kevin managed to get on top. When she ran away, he found out and chased her down. She begged for forgiveness, but he didn't budge. Then he dropped a bomb that stunned her. He punched Vang several times in the face, each blow making his rage subside a little more. However, he never actually rode one. All that changed when he turned 23. His then girlfriend, Jennifer Syme, bought him a Harley-Davidson 883 Sportster as a surprise birthday gift. They spent the afternoon together on his new bike, enjoying the freedom and thrill of riding through the city streets. The girl thanked Keanu for teaching her how to ride and for his understanding. "I'll make sure to pay you back as soon as I can," she said. Keanu smiled and replied, "No need to rush. Just take your time and enjoy the ride." He knew that the experience had changed her, and he was happy to have played a part in that. He waved goodbye and headed home, feeling satisfied with the outcome. As they rode, Keanu shared stories of his early days learning to ride, and the girl listened attentively, occasionally asking questions. She was amazed by Keanu's passion for motorcycles and his dedication to making a difference in the world. Ever since, he'd been riding every chance he got. "I told you to stay away from my dog," he yelled, his face red with anger. He went inside to grab a cup, but when he returned, he found the bike was gone. He also decided to take matters into his own hands. He drove his car to the girl's house, determined to confront her himself. Her front door was slightly ajar, so he quietly slipped in. He found her sitting on the couch watching TV. She was eating a bowl of cereal. Startled, she turned around and asked, "What are you doing here?" "Where's my bike?" Keanu demanded. The girl rolled her eyes and replied, "What bike? I don't know what you're talking about." Someone had stolen it. Furious, he rushed to call the cops. While waiting for them, he checked his phone. To his dismay, he found a video posted on social media showing the thief riding his bike. It was clear. She was the same girl who worked as a barista at that very coffee shop. Keanu instantly recognized her. He looked down at Ving, who was now sitting up and slowly regaining his senses. "Leave my dog alone, and you won't have any more trouble from me," he said, his voice low and menacing. Furious, he confronted her again. This time she broke down and confessed to stealing his bike. "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I needed money and I thought I could sell it." Keanu felt a surge of anger, but he also understood her desperation. "All right, you can keep the bike, but promise me you'll use it for good," he said with a smirk. The girl was shocked. She hadn't expected him to be so understanding. "But I need the money," she stammered. "I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I must decline your kind offer," he said with a playful smile. "However, if you'd like, we could work out a payment plan." The girl couldn't help but laugh. In the end, she agreed to pay him back in installments, while also promising to use his bike for good deeds. Ving stared back at him, his eyes filled with hatred and shame. He knew he'd lost this battle, but it wasn't over. There'd be other chances, other fights. And when that time came, Ving vowed he'd be ready. Kevin stood his ground. "I just wanted to pet him, but you can't even control your own dog. It's not my fault. If you don't want to take care of him, maybe you should just let someone else do it." Ving shot back, "It's none of your business what I do with my dog. Mind your own." He picked up his glass and took a big swig, trying to calm down. One day, Keanu stopped by a popular Hollywood bar. A barback had leaked it, disgusted by Diesel's unhinged behavior. It quickly gained traction, shared with hashtags like #JusticeForBuddy. But the real shock came when someone zoomed in on the dog tag seen in the frame. A fan recognized the name etched on it. "Buddy, if found, call KR." A few hours later, a black Ducati motorcycle pulled up outside the bar. The rider removed his helmet. It was Keanu Reeves. He calmly entered the bar, heads turned. Diesel laughed, thinking it was a prank. But Keanu, always calm and measured, showed him a screenshot of a video and said, "That dog's been with me for 10 years. Diesel, still arrogant, spat on the ground. "So what? Just a dog." As the night went on, Keanu watched the dog closely. He got up, walked over to where the dog was sitting, and asked, "Hey, can I pet your dog?" One of Vin's friends shouted, "What did you say?" Kevin leaned in and repeated, "Can I pet your dog?" This time, though, his voice was sharper. Ving slammed his glass down, stood up, and walked towards Kevin, growling, "Don't ever talk about my dog like that again." Kevin stepped back, surprised by Vin's reaction. "I just wanted to pet your dog. You shouldn't be so sensitive." Ving shook his head, still angry, and went back to his seat. He noticed how it didn't bark or growl at anyone passing by. It just whined softly, hoping for some attention. Meanwhile, a man at the other end of the bar kept glancing over at the dog, sneering each time. That guy was Ving Diesel. He was with a couple of his friends who seemed to find his behavior amusing. He couldn't understand why Ving would treat his dog so poorly. As the night wore on, Kevin decided to call it quits. He paid his bill and left the bar. On his way out, he saw Vin's dog again. It was still sitting there, sad and lonely. He felt sorry for the animal and couldn't help but stop and pet its head before leaving. A while later, Kevin couldn't take it anymore. But Kevin wasn't done. He knew there was no reason for Ving to get upset. Kevin decided to let it go for now. He went back to his seat, but the whole thing kept bothering him. He hoped that Ving would realize what a jerk he was being and that he would treat his dog better. Ving was furious. "You're a dead man," he snarled, lunging towards Kevin. "Get off me," Ving gasped, blood trickling down his lip. Kevin stood up and brushed himself off. The next morning, the video footage of the brawl surfaced online. In another story, a girl had no idea she was messing with the wrong man when she stole Keanu's bike. Growing up, everyone thought motorcycles were cool, and Keanu was no exception. One day, he parked his bike outside a coffee shop in West Hollywood. When the cops arrived, he pointed them to the video. Keanu wasn't buying her story, so he continued to search the house. He found his leather jacket hanging in her closet. Keanu, touched by her kindness, decided to teach her how to ride a motorcycle. As the sun began to set, they returned to her house.